Excuse the noise. I think the crows have found an owl. Usually they find an owl during the day, they mob them. They don't like owls because the owls find them at night and eat them. Anyway, I'm gonna put a video up here that's quite long. You might not want to watch it. Actually, I gave a speech at a fundraiser, local fundraiser lately, and I talked about backpacking, and then I played a little music at the end. It actually answers a lot of questions about my recent hike in Glacier, but also I'm always amazed at what people think, you know, that aren't backpackers, which a majority of these people weren't. And you know, a lot of things we take for granted as backpackers that do it on a regular basis, these people really have no clue. Like, they think I'm crazy for walking through the big cypress swamp. They wonder, you know, a lot of them were older people that don't know a thing about lightweight backpacking and how gear has changed over the years, and maybe they backpacked, you know, in the 60s or 70s or 80s when everything was pretty heavy, and they're kind of amazed at what I carry now. Anyway, the video's long enough already, so I'll shut up. If you're interested in watching it, again, it's pretty long. I talked for a couple hours. I cut it down to about 37 minutes, but that's pretty long. Anyway, keep smiling. Hope you enjoyed if you do watch it. The nice thing about Glacier is you see all the big animals. So on this trip I saw black bear, grizzly, full ram curl, sheep, goats, moose. I mean, you hardly can walk out there for a couple weeks without just seeing everything. It's just a magical place. And a black bear really is totally different personality-wise than a grizzly. If you see a black bear out there, as soon as he sees you, he just goes off like a king. He wants nothing to do with you, whereas a grizzly just ignores you. He's the king of the roost, you know. So anyway, I try and tell people that you don't want to hike there that, you know, don't watch the news, because your chances of getting run over here in Traverse City are much more of a chance than having to deal with a grizzly bear in Glacier National Park. But anyway, so every day I would do a pass in a campground, and you know, I run into all these young people out there mostly. Most people come out there to do a 4 or 5 day trip, which is another reason that you're doing a longer trip, your chances of getting a permit are much better. But I love camping with all these young people at night, and you know, they think I'm ancient, and then I know I am when I ask them a question. Do you know so and so? What was it I was telling you? I was asking if they knew. Oh, I know. This wasn't out there. It was just the other day, but this is the same kind of thing. I said to this girl the other day, I was getting my VA physical for the year, and the nurse went out, and while she was out, I was looking at my phone, and I saw that, how you doing? I saw that Robert Redford had died. So when she came back, and I said, Robert Redford died. She said, who? And I said, Sundance Kid. Is that a Western? My mom loves Westerns. So, I wanted to go from the west side of the park to the east side, which I did. But I could have, if I could have got the sites I wanted, I could have, instead of doing 20-mile days, you know, I could have done 15-mile days and enjoyed it a whole lot better. But I ended up ending the trip 10 days on East Glacier. Now I still have 4 days to kill, so I take the train from East Glacier back to West Glacier. And Amtrak is never on time. Amtrak usually is 12 hours late, but I was lucky it was only 2 hours late. But when I get into West Glacier, it's dark, and now I've got 2 miles to hike up to this campground in the dark, and I'm thinking, that's not a good idea. And so I get off the train, and right behind the train is like, it used to be a Canadian Welcome Center. Glacier is an international peace park. Glacier Waterton International Peace Park. So the Canadians, until COVID, had their own welcome center in East Glacier, and we had ours in Waterton. And anyway, I thought it was still the welcome center, and it belongs to the rafting company now, but it's a beautiful, beautiful castle kind of building. And so I thought, I'll just go back here in the bushes, and I'll, stealth camp. Nobody will even know I'm back here. And so I turned my headlamp off, and so nobody sees me, because a lot of the concession workers live up in past there, and they're all coming by, and I don't want people to know I'm in there. But I can set all my stuff up by Braille nowadays. And anyway, I had perfect weather. The only rain I had, it wasn't even God's fault, it was mine, because at about midnight, sprinkler system kicked on. And but I'm in a waterproof tent, so I just rolled over and went back to sleep. It went off at 12:30 on the dot. And so I went in the next morning. I went into that building. I told the guy, your sprinkler system kicks on at midnight, and I was sleeping back there. And he said, well, it's not a campground. The other thing about these parks today is the concessionaires. So you can't get a good meal in a national park anymore. It used to be eggs and terra. I called it eggs and terrible. And Glacier now has a new one called Pursuit. But you just get warmed over food that they nuke, and it's about 3 times more than you pay for a good meal anyplace else. And in fact, in Yellowstone a few years ago, I went in at Old Faithful. I went in, ordered a hamburger and a beer, fries, and we sat there and didn't come. Finally it came, and it was like they had cooked it last winter and froze it for the summer and then nuked it before they brought it to me. It was like a rubber chicken. Oh, no. And so, anyway, never got my beer. And so they had the comment card there. So I could have taken the comment card and filled it out and left it there, but I thought, no, I'll send it to the CEO of Exantera. And I told him, I said, it's Exanterable is how I wrote it on the letter. Anyway, then I forgot all about it. Well, then the next winter we're in Arizona, and I get a letter and my money back from the guy from Yellowstone. He says, next time you have a problem, you come to me. I said, oh no, I'm going to the CEO. You just throw it away. But it didn't do any good, because they're still putting out rubber chicken. And I said in the letter, I said, the whole world comes to Yellowstone, and they think this is a representation of American hamburger, and it's not even close. You're doing a disservice to America by serving this stuff. Anyway, as far as gear, I haven't changed much. I'm still buying these boots that I love on eBay, because they haven't made them since 2016. And I think I've said before that this company, Ultra, made the perfect boot, and then they've spent years now engineering it into a piece of garbage. And I've tried several different styles that they put out now. Actually, the company sold to North Face, and they just put out terrible boots now. And so at some point in time, I'm going to run out of people selling size 12 boots on eBay of this style. But so far, I've been able to keep going with it. And my pack is everything is lightweight today, only I'm not a lightweight backpacker. So, if you could do a long trail today, everybody's got a Dyneema tent with sailcloth. You go out here on the bay, some of these yachts have these sails that are $100,000, and they're made out of Dyneema, and now they're making tents out of it, and they run $600-700, and they weigh 14 ounces. They'll sleep 1, even 2 people. You can buy a 2-person tent that weighs 16 ounces. My backpack that I did the Continental Divide with was called a JanSport Alaskan, weighed 7.5 pounds, just the pack. And that was lightweight in those days. That was 99. And this pack weighs 29 ounces. Wow. And so everything's that way. Plus, I'm so much more comfortable today. In the old days, you would have, you know, and some people still carry this. I don't know why, because the weight difference is nothing, but some people carry those little foam things and sleep on them. You know, I carry a inflatable that's this big, 72 inches by 20 inches wide, and I sleep like a baby. I even have a blow-up pillow now, and I sleep like a baby. Where I used to wake up, you know, you'd be cold because you're on the hard ground, your shoulder hurt, and you know, those days are over. And I'm not going back. You know, everybody's, you know, I talk to people on the trail that say, gosh, you're carrying a lot of weight there. I'm carrying, my base weight is like 15 pounds. And with 10 days worth of food, I'm maybe 26, 27 pounds. And I'm eating that fast every day. And so I can hike all day. I can do 20 miles a day. I can do 30 when I have to, and nothing hurts. And so I've got all the creature comforts of home, and I don't carry a lot of first aid. I think I've told this story before, but don't stop me because I want to hear it again. When I did the CDT, my friend, I was hiked a lot with a local doctor here. And so I told him, I said, you're in charge of my first aid kit. I want to be able to do everything but open heart surgery, but it's got to weigh 12 ounces. So he gave me drugs. I don't take drugs. And so actually one year I called Rob up here, who was an ER doc, and I said, you know, I've got this knee problem. He told me to get Motrin, ibuprofen. And so I went over to the store and I got it, a little bottle, I'm reading it with my good eye. And it said, can eat holes in your stomach. Oh yeah, I want some of that. And so I didn't take it. And so that night I'm up at Granite Park. This is Glacier again. I'm up at Granite Park Chalet at the campground up there. And I'm camped with all these EMS firefighters from Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And I'm telling them the story, and they said, oh, we eat that stuff like candy for 3 weeks before we even come out here. So then I did take a couple of them, but I don't like to take that stuff. But anyway, with Steve, I'm in New Mexico, you know, maybe a weekend of my Continental Divide trip, and I'm sitting on a rock out in the middle of nowhere and having lunch, and I thought, I should look what he's put in my first aid kit. So he's got a note in there of everything I've got and what I take it for, and when and how much. And I get down to those little nitroglycerin pills that says, if you're having a heart attack, take one every hour until you die. But I don't carry a lot. You know, I carry if I'm going to get a cut or something. I've got some bandages. I've got stuff if I get a blister. But you're really not that far away from human civilization. I don't care where you are in this country. I mean, I laugh when I read about people who get lost and die out on these trails. There was a gal on the Appalachian Trail a few years ago. You know, she went off the trail to take care of business one morning, and she couldn't find her way back to the trail. And she had always heard, just sit still, somebody will find you. Well, she starved to death. Nobody found her until she was gone. So if she would have got up and walked in any direction, she's near the biggest population center in the country on the East Coast. She would have run into somebody or a trail. I don't even think you can walk in circles on the Appalachian Trail without running into something or somebody. And that's pretty much the case everywhere. And really, you know, somebody asked me what I carry map-wise, GPS-wise, in Glacier, and I said, you know, I've been hiking there my whole life. I don't carry anything because I know where I'm at any minute. I've hiked it so much. There's 700 miles of trail out there, all well marked, but you could get confused. I wouldn't tell people that are unfamiliar with it not to take some notes or something, but nowadays you've got everything on your phone, and your phone can die. So if you have any inclination that you're not really up to speed on some of this stuff, you should have a map, a paper map with you. So inReach is a satellite communicator. It's about this big, and you can leave it on all the time if you want to pay enough money for that service. So, you know, it's called leaving breadcrumbs. So you can put it on your shoulder patch, and Gayla could watch me from home going up the trail every 10 minutes. Now, I don't do that. I buy for 15 bucks a month, and I pause it when I'm not using it. It's Garmin. It goes to satellite, and so 3 times a day I can tell her sleeping here tonight, A-okay. And when she opens that, she gets a map that shows me exactly where on the planet that got sent from. And so if she ever has to find my bones, she'll at least be close. And I didn't carry one for years, so when I did the Pacific Crest Trail, I slid that year. I slid 1,000 feet down a pass, just icy pass. I could have killed myself. Actually, there was a Irish kid 2 days behind me. This is 2017. They haven't found him yet, and I'm sure he probably did the same thing. But I didn't break anything, and I was able to climb back out. But at that time, I didn't carry one of these things because I heard that a helicopter ride is, if they have to extract you, is $25,000. So I told Gayla, if I come up with a $25,000 bill, you're going to kill me. Why don't I die peacefully out here on the mountain? But then I found out that if you have Medicare, they have to come get you. So when I found that out, I was all in. I bought one. Question. So you don't want to get there too early because of snow. Going to the Sun Highway I've seen it open as late as mid-July. Usually they have it open sometime in late June. But a lot of the backcountry sites aren't open in June because they're too muddy. Even if the snow is melted, they don't want to be people walking in there and getting the sites all messed up. So they usually hold them back until it's dried out, which is usually, the majority of them are available first part of July. Not that you can't go out there and get some in June, but a lot of them are still closed. And so timing's kind of everything too. I went out there this year because it's kind of my favorite time, and the thimbleberries are, like primo. Actually, the huckleberries too. I don't really like the huckleberries as much as the thimbleberries, but I would pick a pint of thimbleberries. I'd eat a quart, but I'd pick a pint of thimbleberries every day, and I'd add it to my cereal as a dessert at night. So I got some crunch in my granola and this sweet thimbleberry juice. And so you just have to be careful, when you're picking, that you're also looking for bears. They like them also. Any other questions? Yes. That's the other thing about hitchhiking. So when you're on these long trails, everybody's going to pick you up because, number one, you're a big part of their economy. All these little towns on these trail towns, and all these trails were hurting during COVID because people weren't hiking. They were telling people, don't come out, don't hike. And these towns live on hikers, and they make millions of dollars every summer because, 10,000 people start the PCT every year. I don't know how many thousands start the AT, but a lot. And now they're putting them together. So now you can walk. When I was on the Florida Trail, I ran into a kid from Canada who was doing the Eastern Continental Divide Trail. So you go from Key West to the Bay of Fundy in Canada, 5,700 miles. And so a lot of people are doing that now. I ran into 3 other people attempting that. I don't know if they finished or not. I know he finished. And when I was in Florida last year, I went back to do the Big Cypress Swamp again, which is the first 35 miles of the Florida Trail when you're walking in water from here to here through a beautiful cypress swamp, though. A lot of people think that's crazy, but it really isn't. There's nothing out there anymore. The pythons have eaten everything. But anyway, I ran into 2 kids that were going to do what they call border-to-border Triple Crown. So they were going Key West to Katahdin, and they're going Campo to Canada on the PCT, and then over to Glacier and going the CDT down to Mexico, all in 12 months. And they're still both out there. I follow them. They're still out there plugging away. And, they'll do 35, 40 miles a day. They're super light. That's a marathon. a lot of people think I hiked a long way in one day, but it's really not. To me, it's all about, and these kids, you know, I see them on these long trails, they see this old man, they think, we're never going to see him again. You know? And then after a couple of weeks of having to pass me every day, they start getting friendly, you know, and then finally on the PCT, this little German girl said to me, "You're doing 30 miles a day?" And I said, "You are too, because you're keeping right up with me." But, you know, they sleep late, they stop early, and they go to town and drink beer every chance they get. And I don't do any of those things. I get up early, I walk late, and I don't go to town for beer. And so in the morning, I'm passing their tent, even though they've passed me the day before. They're still sleeping, and I scoot right on by, and so they're just shocked when they see me again. Any other questions? Yes. I mean, Arizona actually fools you. And I tell people when they're asking me about doing the Arizona Trail, because so many people, they don't know the desert. They think, you know, they come out in their Hawaiian shirt. That's their clothing. I'm serious. I mean, that's what they have. And you know, so I've got pictures of me March 4th. I'm not up in the mountains, so you know the Arizona Trail has sky islands. So you start from the border and you climb right to 9,600 feet and snow right away, and right down the other side, and then you're desert until you come to the next mountain, and you go up to 8,800 feet and snow, and then you come down and you get around Catalina, Oro Valley there, and you go up to Somerville, I think the furthest south ski area is there, and again you go up to over 8,000 feet and snow. But I wasn't in that. I was down in the desert, and I'd actually heard, I had a connection, and I heard a weather report that we were going to have 65-mile-an-hour winds and a snowstorm, and I thought, what has this guy been smoking? It was a beautiful day, you know, 80 degrees, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and my tents kind of hit me in the face, and I thought, I must have lost a stake, so I went to push it away, and it's just solid snow. My tent was like a snow fence, and we did have like 8 inches of snow, and it blew hard. And I've got pictures of me taking the tent down, and now you have a problem because it's just all white, and you don't know where the trail is, you know, because you're just following a path through the desert on the Arizona Trail. But you can kind of tell, and this is good even in the forest, you can tell by trail maintenance, you know, where people have maintained the trail, and you know, all of a sudden there's a lot of cactus that way and a lot of cactus that way, but you can just kind of see a trail going through the cactus. That's the trail. And the other thing is, animals use the trail. So I've been on the PCT in snow where I can't tell where the trail is, and I just follow animal tracks. And even when they come to the switchbacks, they follow those tracks, those trails. So anyway, I've always written songs, and when you write songs, you gotta really kind of reach deep into your creative pool. And what I've found out over the years is that my pool is really shallow, and because all my songs are kind of abstract and come out kind of goofy. Anyway, so
this thing working?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
working. So anyway, the first song is, I grew up in Pontiac, Michigan, and along with my friend Ann up here, and too bad Richard Pittman's not here tonight because we all went to the same high school. Anyway, you know, that economy was pretty much the auto industry, and my neighborhood was mostly people from the human migration that came up from the south to work in the plants, or down from the UP. You know, this is where the work was down there, and it was good when it was good, but it wasn't always good. So I can remember, like in the 80s, there was a sign that said, "Last person out of Michigan, turn off the lights." And so I can remember being out in Arizona not too many years ago, sitting in the desert watching nightly news, and they said that Pontiac don't you say that I'm homeless. I'm just down on my luck. I don't know where to go, so I'm just living in my truck. I had me a job in the factory, and they shut down the line. The way things are, can't sell no cars, so I'm just living in mine. Well, I was making real good money, but they wouldn't let me stay. So here I go, down the road, in my one-room Chevrolet. I take my meals at fast food windows, drink at drive-through liquor stores. Don't cut no grass, all I've got gas in my old 454. So don't you say that I'm hopeless. I'm just down on my luck. I don't know where to go. I'm just living in my truck. Okay, I'll play another one. I haven't seen her do this yet. So. Keep smiling.
I know that. You told me that so many times.
So when I had the Dickie Bird News, she did all the graphics. Thanks for my owl.
Now I crochet birds.
Well, you're doing a good job. So this song, I always thought when I wrote this would be good for Farm Aid, and actually, probably one of the best concerts that I've ever been to was Willie Nelson at Interlochen. And when Karen up here used to be a drug dealer, we would get tickets because if you bought enough drugs from Karen, she would get tickets, and so she'd have extra tickets. And she would give them to her friends, so she gave us tickets to Willie Nelson one night. So we get there, Willie's half hour late. He's golfing over at Interlochen. And when he comes in, the bus pulls in behind the stage, and he gets out, and these two, like, college girls sitting in front of us, this is probably 10 years ago, they're screaming and crying like he's the Beatles and it's Ed Sullivan. And I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, you know, he's like 85. And so then I'm wondering, okay, how does Willie get back to that bus after this concert without people like this, you know, molesting him? And after the show, I'm sitting up there talking to my friend Dave Monstre here, and I said, where's Gayla? And he said, she's down there slapping Willie on the knee. And sure enough, she's down there slapping Willie. And so I see her handing something, and I see him put it in his back pocket. And so she tells me later that she gave him a tape with this song on it. And I said, and I was a little upset. She said, what's the problem? I said, well, I saw you give it to him, put it in his back pocket. He's never going to hear that song. He hasn't changed those pants since 1971. And so, obviously, I haven't heard from Willie. And they just had Farm Aid like last week, and I'm still not there. Anyway, this is about a farmer who loses the farm. I've got a friend named Leroy, been a farmer all his life. Last week, he lost the farm and run off with his wife. Well, it didn't bother Leroy. They took his tractor and his fuel. But the man, he went plumb crazy. They started messing with his mule. Took 7 men to hold him, 1 to tie him down. He still tore up the courthouse, knocked down half the town. Let this go and show you. Take a man's wife, take his gas. But you'd better stand back, boys. He's about to lose his mule. Now Leroy's on a chain gang. Makes $1 a day. Says it's a lot like farming, except this job pays. Now Leroy's getting out real soon, but he's no fool. Gotta remember the words. No more farming. No more women. He's going on welfare with that mule. Now Leroy never farmed again. At least that's what they say. He's been saving those food stamps. Man's a millionaire today. And every time that I see him in that China Cadillac, I always know that it's Leroy that carries the mules in the back. So if you're a farmer, take Leroy's advice. Hold your mule, burn your fuel, and give some banker your wife. So just as a footnote, I wrote that song at the Red House, and your father was kind of the catalyst because he loved his mule. That's how old that song is. Okay, I appreciate y'all coming tonight. One more. What do you want to hear? Sidewind. Okay, one more. So, who has read Howard Zinn's History, People's History of America? One hand. Boy, the rest of you ought to read it. Then you'd find out that probably most of the things you learned in school were propaganda. And I went to a Catholic school up to 4th grade, so I had a whole subculture of propaganda. The 4th grade doesn't sound very far, but it took me 5 years to get there. And finally my mother convinced her that I was allergic to Catholics because I'd come home and my knuckles would all be swollen. Anyway, So this song's about a character that's probably pretty normal for how the I call it sometimes How the West Was Won, or I call it Sidewinder. Let me put a capo on this thing. That last impression there. Robbed a bank in Abilene. Even stole me a horse. Been married a dozen times. Never been divorced. Always cheated cards. Never cut them no slack. If they take my money, I just shoot them in the back. I'm an old sidewinder, an old sidewinder. Never take no bad, neither does my horse. We got no etiquette, never took the course. We ride all day through the dust and grit. That's probably why we smell like an old sidewinder, an old sidewinder. Married a girl in Deadwood, sold her daddy some land. Told him it was a gold mine, nothing but a worthless pile of sand. Weren't even mine, now it ain't his. That's what happens, boys. You do biz with an old sidewinder, an old sidewinder. Always cuss and swear, always cheat and lie. Been hung a dozen times, but I just will not die. Always rustle cows, and I change the brand. Sell gold to Indians, steal their land. I'm an old sidewinder, an old sidewinder. Those are just things I admit to. Thank you. Appreciate you all coming.
Thank you. Thank you everybody for coming out tonight. Dick, thank you very much. It's always a wonderful evening.
It's always fun.
Dick generously donates his time and talent to this tonight, so thank you for coming out.